All right, all right. Welcome. Welcome, one and all. We have an audience here on the Zoom call. We have an audience on YouTube. Thanks everyone for joining me. If if you are in the Yachad, some of our support team, then you are welcome to join us in the Zoom. We try to keep an eye on that. If someone sends us a note, you just send an email to us, and we'll be happy to send you that Zoom link. Hold on one second. So we're going to be here with the whole group until about 1 p.m., and then we're going to just be on the Zoom call with the Yachad members. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. I think we have a lot to discuss today. I'm sure that some of you have some good questions based on what we covered today. Remember, the class today, or the Torah Pearls episode, searching the sacred strangeness. I don't know what else to call it, because what we have here is a lot of laws, a lot of varied laws from the law code in Deuteronomy. So it has to be what it has to be. So there's quite a bit there. And I think some of you probably have some good insight into some of those laws, and you may have some comments or some questions. And I am open to all of those. At some point, we're going to talk a little bit about what is coming. This is, by the way, look at this beauty. You can't even recognize the beauty in this Bible necessarily on the screen, but I'm telling you, it is. I'm so happy about this, and I'm looking forward to using this Bible to really launch into an exciting new series. And I started to say knee deep, but I'm probably up to the hair of my chinny chin right now with some pretty fun stuff. And if we have time today, after you help me understand this Torah portion better, I'm happy to get into some of that, because I am really into a study right now on Elijah. And I think even this morning, early, right after the cock crows, we have a rooster now, I've been into this text, and I saw something that I've missed until now, so I hopefully will have a chance to talk a little bit about that. It has to do with Elijah the Tishbite. What is a Tishbite? But before all of that, Michael Gibson the Sage. What's happening, brother?
Not much, Ross. How you doing?
Man,
Shabbat shalom.
I don't think I could be any better. I am so thankful to be here and to be, as far as I know, healthy and happy. Well, I know I'm happy. I think I'm healthy. So I'm ready, man. What you got?
Well, I just wanted to jump in there right quick before Clody, because I know it was short last Saturday, but she took up the whole time.
Yeah, you got to watch her. Sometimes she's like that, but usually she comes up with some pretty good stuff, doesn't she?
Yes, she did. I mean, there were several comments about how interesting what she had to say was.
I always look forward to hearing from Clody, but I look forward to listening to you too. What you got? What's on your mind, brother?
Well, I just, and I think you answered my question, but I think y'all kind of skipped over chapter 23, and probably because you couldn't rein Jonah in.
You got to be careful. Look, I bleeped one. I had Seth bleep one thing, and Seth asked me, why worry about that? I mean, there's so many things that we have to bleep for Jonah if we really wanted to keep it under a PG-13.
Right.
What
Well,
what you see in Deuteronomy 23 that I might not have talked about?
I was curious, about you shall not bring the price of a loose woman, let's say.
Okay.
A woman, a price
Yeah.
of what? Can I say prostitute? I think I did. I
Yeah,
can.
prostitute's probably okay.
But it says because and I don't understand it at all, because it says, I mean, I understand what they're trying to do there, but it says, like, if you paid her a sheep, then the sheep would not be worthy for sacrifice. But I don't understand. She's got it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not going to sacrifice it. So does that mean, and because you can't take the price of it, you can't take a sheep up there. It was really confusing.
Well, let me tell you, there are various understandings of this verse, and I'm open for other people's ideas here. I've looked into this a little bit. I know many of you have studied various sources. I see OV, he probably has an Oxford note, and I've looked at some of those kind of things. In 23, there he's got his good, faithful Oxford Companion Study Bible. Good job. I do that as well. So you look at it from a couple of different ways. What I try to do is I want to know, whether I accept it or not, I want to know the fundamental religious answer. I want to be familiar with that because that's the one a lot of people hold. I also want to know, what do we know from an academic standpoint? Is there any insight that other ancient Near Eastern documents can give us, perhaps not just rabbinic literature, but are there other historical sources we can go to that kind of help shed some light on this? So let me read it from the ASV, Michael, if I might, and then let me go from there. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, this is the ASV. I'm making, by the way, the American Standard Version great again. Here we go. There shall be no prostitute of the daughters of Israel, neither shall there be a sodomite of the sons of Israel. Thou shalt not bring the hire of a harlot or the wages of a dog into the house of Jehovah thy God for any vow, for even both these are an abomination unto Jehovah thy God. So one view that I've come across in my studies, and I'll just put this one out, is that let's say you make money from one of these practices. That money is not, it's tainted. I guess you could say it that. It's dirty money, as we would call it in our culture. And you don't want to bring that in if you're making a vow and use that as the method of payment. And I'll give you a funny story that I heard that's not quite related, but maybe a tiny bit if you bear with my kind of funny story. I know a lot of people are going to throw up when I say this. Hopefully you'll turn the camera off. But I used to listen to Jimmy Swaggart, even when I didn't agree with him theologically, because he's such a dynamic speaker. He's really, really good, was good. May he rest in peace, all right? But he said one time, remember, he was cousins with Mickey Gilley and Jerry Lee Lewis, and as some people put it, they were better guys than he was. But the funny story that I heard him say one time during a telethon, he's making millions of dollars, and he said that, I don't care where you got that money. He said, you give a tithe to the Lord. Now, you know the way Swaggart did this. I'm not impugning the reputation of a person who's deceased. I'm not intentionally doing it. But he said that when he was growing up in Faraday, Louisiana, they had a Coke machine at a little store on a country dirt road. And he and Jerry Lee Lewis went down to the Coke machine one day, and they put in the necessary money, whatever it was, probably a nickel at the time, and they got a Coke, and they got their change back. And he said they realized that if they did it again, more money would come out than they put in originally. And sometimes they'd get a drink, sometimes they didn't. And he said, you know the difference in me and Jerry Lee? This is his grammar, not mine. He said the difference is that Jerry Lee used his money for bad. He said, I gave a tithe off of my money. We got a tithe off of money he made from ripping off a Coke machine. So I think not necessarily a great example, but it's what I believe Deuteronomy 23, 17, and 18 is saying is that money earned through bad is already tainted and you shouldn't bring it to the holy. It's the same idea as you taking you're basically robbing the system of sanctity. So you wouldn't offer, for those who follow the sacrificial cult and believe in its positive benefit, you don't bring the worst of the flock. You don't bring a maimed or a crippled or an injured animal because you benefit. It's not doing you any good, so you give it to God. I think that's my view, and I'm open for other ideas. What do you think, Michael? Does that hold any weight at all or no?
Well, yeah, I think that, I think it's basically what they're trying to do
Yeah.
or say.
Yep.
But I mean, the only person that's gonna gain anything, as far as like the prostitute's gonna get the sheep,
Yeah.
unless you're sending the prostitute out to work for you, and she brings you the sheep from somebody she meets. You know, I mean, you're not going to
Yeah.
get anything. That's
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say. Some of these laws, in fact, one of
I mean,
the yeah, go ahead.
well, and if you were doing that, well, then you're in bad shape anyway.
Yeah.
If you got a prostitute working for you,
Yeah.
you know, you're already on bad faith there.
Maybe
So,
so. Yeah. Well,
but
not maybe so.
it makes no sense that if you give her the sheep, that, you know, I mean, she's got the sheep.
Yeah.
She's probably not going to the temple, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So,
maybe.
well,
We
that
don't
could
know.
be too. That could be too.
Yeah, I mean, we hope she goes to the temple or to a house of worship. This is, by the way, I'm into all kind of stuff because I'm getting ready for the Jesus and gospel thing. You know,
All
we
right.
have, when we approach the text, sometimes we break these groups into the holy and the sanctified, and everybody's, goody goody, and then you have those bad dregs of society, and
Right.
and one of the things that I love so much about the text associated with, people can argue the validity or whatever, but the Jesus of Nazareth that comes out pretty clearly in most of these texts is one who does associate with those people and opens the door. It's like, hey, come on in. Who else are we talking to? I mean, what? I'm here talking to a bunch of holy people, but maybe I ought to be standing outside a bar in Baton Rouge teaching, right, with my new
Well,
Bible.
it may be that, you know, it's just as simple as what you said. It's just that the way they worded it doesn't make sense.
Well, also, just one more point. If you look at it's hard to remember, this is a collection of laws. We call it the Law Code. That's not a name that was stenciled on the original scroll, but it is a group, as I called it when I talked to Jono, many and varied. It's hard to categorize. These laws are just, some of them are just odd. I mean, they come in. It's why we called it the search of the sacred strangeness. But there are three verses back to back that really deal with money. And then it leads into the system of vows. So it's really bigger than that. But you've got quite a bit here. You have not only is it kicks off with this taking money that I think means was earned through prostitution or sodomy, and the hire of a harlot or the wages of a dog. That's like parallelism there. Going and using that money in a sacred setting. And then you get into what's next. You get interest. It's associated with money or financial value. And then you roll into this whole idea of vows, which also involved bringing something of value, and you bring that with your quote unquote vow, your neder, Neder in English.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that makes more sense. It's just ill-gained money or
that's a
money
good way
that
to put it. I like that.
yeah, because
Yeah.
now you go right in the second part of that. You shall not bring the price of a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not talking about a good cow dog or a good bulldog. That's talking
Yeah.
about
Am I
a
going to have
male
to bleep you
prostitute.
here? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got ahead of the bleep time.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, I think probably everybody knows that.
Right. But it is an odd law, but not so much. One thing I read, Richard Elliott Friedman often says in both writing and when he talks about the zones of sacredness, we really don't understand that. A lot of the laws, particularly ritual purity laws, OV made that comment in the chat while this was going on. I used the term cleanliness just in scare quotes, he says, well, it's really about purity, and that's actually much more accurate. We're not talking about washing away, like people say when we read in some of these formal translations, a person shall be unclean until the evening. Well, that doesn't mean you can smell them when they walk by. I mean, you might can, but it has nothing to do with that term. It has to do with sanctity in the sense of ritual purity. Holiness laws is what the priestly writer would call it. And Friedman talks about sacred zones, right? You have the wide, which is sort of a common. If it's not, it's a natural. A person who is experiencing human functions. Maybe they had a nocturnal emission, to use some of the language in Leviticus 12, 13, 14, or a person is on a monthly cycle. Doesn't mean this is natural, but those things are excluded from a sacred zone, you see. And I think that's what we're dealing with in a lot of these priestly materials.
Okay, and I didn't think about this, but I want to ask you one more question real
Sure.
quick. When it talks about like the person with the crushed stones, there's the Moabite, the Amorite,
Uh-huh.
they shall not enter the I forget the way it says, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm, well, anyway, what the Rashi says was that, they're here, they're talking about the service. In other words, the Levitical service, service of the
Yes.
temple. I
Yes.
mean, because Isaiah talks about the reward to the eunuch.
Right.
So it's just that they're, in other words, Moabites, anybody, any of those people mentioned, it's not that they can't enter into the worship of
That's
Elohim
right.
but they just can't work as a Levitical or serve in the ministry.
Yeah, we get a lot of that. The priestly writers would really stand some big lawsuits in today's world. If you read some of the priestly prohibitions in terms of who can serve as a priest, you got dwarfs and all sorts of stuff. Jonah would use this as an opportunity to say, I couldn't serve as a priest because I'm only 5'8". But the idea is that it's very exclusionary, and it's set up in such a way. There is this idea that a person who is not whole, by the way, the same almost the same criteria that's used for the sons of Aaron in the priestly writers is some of the same language, slightly worded slightly differently, than what we see for the service of the priest. The priest can't be maimed, and neither can the animals. Again, I think to Richard Elliott Friedman's point, it has to do with the sacred zones, and a person is representing the service to the Most High, and therefore they need to be in a state of physical, mental, spiritual wholeness. And at least that's the way we understand it. And I don't know that we really understand it very much at all, honestly, because even if you read in Talmudic tractates, even if you study the Mishnah, there are questions that remain as to how these services were carried out and some of the peculiarities. We just don't know anymore. It's been 2,000 years, and we're relying on reports, even in Jewish literature, that is later than the period of the cessation of these practices. And we think that they retain some of what really went on, but we don't know that for certain.
Right, because there's one of those prohibitions that it says for 10 generations or even forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might be the Amorites, the Moabites. But anyway, it answers my question about like Ruth, because a lot of people question that. And it's just that they can't enter the service. That doesn't mean they can't.
Well, let me say one thing. In those texts, a lot of times people are excluded from what is called the kahal in Hebrew, the assembly.
Right.
Some translations haven't checked my ASV on this one, but it's sometimes translated congregation, and that's an even more exclusionary restriction. So here, like, I love Moab. Ruth is one of my favorite people, and I love Moab because of my studies of discoveries there and so forth. But the people of Moab clearly are the recipient of, I know this might make people uncomfortable. If you're one of those people, put your hands over your ears while I say this. Sometimes the writers of biblical literature are racist against ethnicities outside their own. Let me qualify that before you all sign off. When I look at, if you're in the biblical period, the period when some of these stories are written, you imagine, let's look at Genesis 19, 18 and 19, and the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's this idea that how did these people come about? Well, let me tell you, their daddy fled Sodom and Gomorrah and slept with his daughters. It's really a rough story. Now, there are a lot of people, many of you may say, well, that's exactly what happened. But I think sometimes we witness in the biblical material sort of a later anachronistic addition to some of these texts that make our enemies look really, really bad. But that's just my view. You don't have to accept that. So,
Well,
the Moabites, the Moabites, I think it's interesting that when it says, no Moabite is going to be in the kahal for up to the 10th generation, and then you read that David is a descendant of a Moabitess, well, then everybody says, yeah, but it's not talking about women, it's talking about the men. And I just find that to be a stretch.
Well, but I think that clears it up for me that, that they're forbidden from serving in the ministry, everything else, because like you said, a lot of those same restrictions apply to the Levites, Kornites too. So I think that, that explained it to me that they're just excluded from ministry.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Hey, that's some good stuff. So you came out of the gate with all the PG-13 stuff. Now, what else can we talk about? You ready to?
Oh, that's about all I'm hoping I'm right about that because it seems right to me because, like I said, Isaiah mentions the rewards of the eunuch. So
yeah, and just,
it's just
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's just like I say, they can't serve in the ministry.
Yep. Well, there's some
And
good stuff. The Bible is, I don't want to say a mixed bag, but the Bible has all sorts of writing, all different genres. We've got some what I would call sacred history. Some people would question the historicity of some things, but we get all these different stories that are mixed in, and we have the good and the bad. You know, if you just read the Exodus story, you might be inclined to have a very negative view of Egypt forever and always. They're the bad guy in the story. But yet Isaiah 19 talks about Egypt and Assyria are called my people. So it's always like we have these prophets who come along and say, hey, before you go to hating, let's be careful.
right,
It's got both.
uh, right, and I mean, the Bible, the Tanakh is really very much PG-13 in a lot of cases. I mean, just like that euphemism they're using there as a dog.
Yeah,
And they're not, like I said, they're not talking about a good cow dog or a good bulldog,
right.
It's definitely a euphemism for
Something
not a good
else.
guy.
Let me help you. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So anyway, that's all I got, Ross.
Hey, good stuff, Michael. And it's always an honor to have a sage like you in the audience. Thanks, Michael.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was gonna sign off with that. But so
Well, go ahead and
you
do
two,
it.
well, it's just, that's just all my sagely comments for the day.
Well, hang tight in case you come up with something else. Always welcome, my brother.
Thank you very much.
God bless you, man.
You too. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Sister Miriam, how are you, my friend?
I am so blessed, Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me?
Amen, sister. I hear you loud and clear.
Great. I just want to say thank you so much. Oh, it's so enlightening, Michael. Thank you, thank you. But I also want to touch on last night on Sabbath. James Tabor came in with a comment and he said, another comment. I hope I don't want to take over, incorporate too much. And that gave me chills. And I say, no,
Take
no,
over.
no way can he not take over.
I hear you. You wanted to hear him.
He is a beginning. He is a great influence to me. And anything he say, I welcome. No matter where, whether it's in Sabbath classes, whether it's in Patty and Dave welcoming the Sabbath,
Yep.
it don't matter. It hurt me in the heart and to say for him to think that. And so I just want to let him know he is a founder, whether he believe it or not.
Amen. So you welcome his comments. I do too.
Too many.
Careful, he's listening.
I've been on his teachings for years, and then you came in and we kept going with even him and whoever, Patty and Dave added, uh, um, so many.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, I'm not touching on what I want to say on the class because it's so great, but you got to give your praises and your accolades and your roses where due.
We say kol hakavod.
I mean,
all the glory. That's a good point.
Never think you're offending or intruding, because everybody may not understand and know who he is, but I have a beginning in the 80s, late 80s, 89, 90s. Well, that's I got so much.
I hear you.
I learned a path, a good way I was taught, you know? And so even with Joe Good,
Yeah.
you know, it was a route, but a route kept going. And so you don't stop. You don't get stagnant. You keep growing.
I got you.
And I grew to United Israel World Union. And here we are. And it's since 08, 9. And I never let go. It's like a thread. You grab onto the Z seats and you hold on.
Better hang on tight. You better hang on tight, right?
And that's what I'm encouraging people today. Hold on.
That's it.
Okay.
All right, sister.
Okay.
Hey,
With that
have
part.
a beautiful Sabbath. And
I'm
if
not
you,
done with nothing with that part,
yeah,
but I do have a question.
all right. That was just a warm up. I'm ready.
Fine. And you know, I learned that with this group because you just get so full and you don't know where to let it out but here, you know?
Yep.
I mean, I don't have other groups. I don't want other groups.
Who would want another group? This is what you need right here. What's your question, sister?
The sister is the question for the sister is to my brother. Why? Okay, if a man is kicked somehow in the wrong part,
Yeah.
is he considered an impotent man? You know, by the community, like we know donkeys or whatever. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But that happened. Is that a rule that say, okay, well, don't touch him, you don't want to marry him, he might not have children?
Well, it's a tough question. Number one, I guess it depends on how hard somebody's kicked.
Yeah.
But I tell you, of course, the law in this particular Torah portion I think you're referring to is someone who is injured, and it probably does connect to the idea of being able to produce children. That is one of the priestly exclusionary rules. The person has to be intact and must be able to produce children. And but again, these ancient laws, we're trying to look on these ancient laws with our 2025 minds and really get back at understanding exactly what we're dealing with. And again, I think it goes back to these zones of sanctity. Look, there are some things that just we can't help. There are people who have a certain problem, and it has nothing to do with being cursed by God or anything like that. But I think in general, when we read these rules, some of these are really associated with the performance of certain duties in the zones of sanctity. So hopefully that kind of helps.
Okay, another question.
All right.
Okay. Were there usually a price for women? Why women? And not men. It's always a price. And someone did make a statement, said, well, the women are more valuable. Oh my.
You're not going to pull me into this one, Miriam. I tell you, I'm going to side with you on that. No, I think what you may be talking about there is we get into the price of a woman in some of these texts that we covered today in this particular Torah portion, Kitetse, and you are dealing again with ancient rules. Some societies still have some of this. I think it was OV that pointed out the difference in, the bride price. You have different terms that we use in English to kind of capture this idea. But in a patriarchal society like we encounter in some of these biblical texts, a woman, this may not come out right because I don't know that we quite understand the nuance here, but a woman is property in the sense that the man has responsibility, a responsibility to take care of, and this woman belongs to him. And so, and whenever you take someone from a family, there's a cost associated with it. So in the ancient world, someone would actually pay the family. We get a beautiful story. One of the most beautiful stories that we encounter in the Pentateuch is in Genesis 24, where Abraham sends his servant to go get a woman for his son, and you have this beautiful exchange. Remember, she's at the well, and he goes back, and he's got the jewelry, and it's all part of this ancient world, and we're just trying to understand it in our modern day. Does that help?
That helps. Great.
Hey, good talking to you.
No, wait. Another question, maybe two. I'm sorry. I know you're not used to me answering these all these
I am
questions.
used to you answering all these.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But, inquiring minds want to know from inquiring minds.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the woman, did she have a price? Okay, let's say she was a queen and she was not a virgin. Was she still able to be having a price set on her or sold to her? Or did she have what we would consider as a queen status, not sellable? Because we're talking about women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A quick answer from basically what I do know from the text. The price is the price. At least in the Pentateuch, it sort of discusses that. We don't have an example in the Pentateuch where a queen is involved. What we do see more than anything in the rest of the Tanakh is that a lot of times a marriage would be made between, say, a king of Israel or a prince who was to be king and a neighboring princess, that would be brought together for very good political cause. Like you see this in a lot of the stories through Kings and Chronicles. You do see that some of that is meant to bring together wealth in various political angles. But we don't get examples on, how much is this person worth. Now, I would bet that if I really wanted to study it, there's probably a lot of this is maybe found in the Talmud. We'll get Valentine to ask if there might be a whole section there that says, well, if the woman has this color hair and she's a princess, then she's worth this much, and who knows? But a lot of those kind of questions are outside of my expertise, so I can't really answer all of those.
Okay. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. Look, I was going to say we've got a couple of more people with their hands up.
One more last one.
One more last one,
Okay.
and then you'll wait. You can come back in.
We are Southern people.
Yeah.
Okay. And the topic was about linen, cotton. I more was a cotton person. What's best for the South?
Oh, I tell you what,
I'm
that's a good
sorry.
question. No, that's a good question. I like cotton and linen, and rarely gets cold enough for me to don any wool.
Yeah.
But so I'm with you.
Stubborn.
I'm with you, my sister. In the South, I prefer something light and airy. That's my preference.
Amen.
Good
Okay.
to see you. Good to hear from you. Now, look.
Shabbat shalom to all. Thank you.
That's right. Stick
Can't
around.
wait for everybody else's comment.
Good stuff. Thank you, Miriam.
Shabbat shalom.
OV, welcome.
Welcome, Ross.
Hey, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. So there's so many things here that are related to something I just come across, but I don't know it well enough, near enough to actually go into it. But I can bring up quite a few points here.
Okay.
A lot of this is from Debt by David Graeber. He's
Okay.
an anthropologist, and I read his previous book I read was his book on the dawn of everything,
Yeah.
which kind of starts out with the transition from the hunter-gatherer into the cities and the agricultural, right? And he does a lot of debunking on this standard story that's told to us. And a lot of it is Hobbesian apologetics, and it permeates the entire social science realm for the last few hundred years. So he goes into saying it's like, no, what we got is not manifest destiny and the only society we could have and the only way this could be, that all along the way there's been choices made, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the dawn of everything. But that prompted me to read his book on debt, and I'm only about a third of the way through it here.
Okay.
And he's talking about debt preceding money, and this image that we got that money came out of barter, that made barter easier. And he says, no, that's not true. And he backs it up quite a bit.
Huh.
He talks about debt being an obligation, and it's a social thing, and it's a relational thing. And there's that relational debt. And it was only much later that we get into the commercial debt, which is what we see now. And that most, even when they did have money, even when currency come about, whether it was wampum belts or whatever it was that was the common unit, that was just an accounting term. They did not exchange money for their daily stuff like buying food and goods and stuff like this. That was all done with relational, you owe me something and then I'll get you back later for it type.
Right.
Where it did come in was with paying back debts that were status and a bunch of other reasons, but they weren't commerce. Then we get into commerce debt, which came a much later, and that kind of really confused everything. That's the one right there on the chat.
Yeah.
But in an early form, women were currency. And the way this come about was that if you took a loan from somebody, you didn't pay them interest. You had an obligation to pay them back. You would often have to give up one of your kids or your wife as collateral.
Yeah.
And their labor until you paid it back was the interest, and they were the principal. And if you didn't pay it back, you didn't get them back.
Gotcha.
And then from that, we get into different types of slavery. Now, these debt pawns were not the same thing as slaves.
Uh-huh.
They were not property that you could use in any way that you wanted. They
certain rules applied in how you dealt with them.
A lot of rules applied to it. So, but it's another thing that he mentioned there was that this idea of charging interest on a loan, as we see it, think of it today, it was like in 500 BC Athens when this was not a known concept yet. Mm-hmm. It's like our traditional idea of usury and stuff. Yeah. And I thought that was strange. It's like, whoa, okay, so we got that in the Bible that you can't charge usury to your fellow countrymen. So they must have been right at the cutting edge of this happening here. But it comes up much later. And it was when it went from relational debt to commercial debt, where everything became commercial debt and commodified with a price on it and stuff like this.
Yeah.
But to get back to these pawns, there was a time where we, in like 6th century England or in 6th century Ireland, where we have a lot of written evidence because for some reason they were writing a lot of this stuff down. And in terms of the common currency was the female slave, which wasn't a slave. It was actually just a marker because these women weren't actually traded around. It was just a way of comparing what everything was in value relative to everything else, right? And the reason that they know this is because they found a huge written record of all of this type stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, there's so much between debt as a social obligation and a foundation for ethics. And then when they went into money as a commercial transaction commodity with the interest and everything, that's
so this study,
to,
just to jump in, this study that you're doing, you're looking to find the origin of when these concepts and these ideas came into play, and how does that overlay with the biblical text? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Like what's the foundation for a lot of this stuff, and how could they have written a few things in the scripture 2,000 years ago that would have prevented a bunch of problems that we have today?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my main perspective on how I see things. And I'm looking forward to the last 2/3 of the book, but it just raised so many questions on debt and money and ethics and morality and the whole foundation of where that all started, that it's just, I don't know enough to talk about it. It's just so many new things that like come up for me.
No,
So
I'm in the same boat.
Leave it at that.
Hey, good
It's
stuff,
just,
though. And when you deal with what we're dealing with in this law code, we are dealing with laws that are many and varied. They're all over the place. So it's the idea is that we really have to dig deep to try to figure out where do these ideas begin, and where do we go to find them, and were the biblical text really ahead of the time? And sometimes we find the answer to that is yes. Sometimes we find anachronisms in the text, but both of those options have to be on the table, right?
yeah, exactly. And one thought that keeps coming up to me the last while reading through Graeber's stuff is just how Johnny come lately the whole Bible crowd is, right? With the Hebrews and that. And it's like there's a big long history that precedes this. And that what we're looking at here is a lot of a patriarchal tribal alternative to
Yep.
the cosmopolitan metropolitan type
Mm-hmm.
social structure that had been around for a couple thousand years before that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that gets covered enough in most of the stuff that I read.
Yeah. Hey, good stuff, OV. Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Hang
Thank you.
around. All right. We're going to tell our YouTube audience Shabbat Shalom. If you're with us and you want to join the Zoom, if you're a member of the Yachad, you know where to find us. Join us because we're going to go for, I don't know, we'll go for a while longer, quite a while longer. So have a beautiful Sabbath. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.